go longer lengths in their careers as well. And the US had a score of 28 in the overall index, and 74th in wage equality for similar work, 51st in equal labor force participation. They had some positive areas where 48% of wage employment is reported to be made of women, which is good, but only 10% of corporate boards currently have women in their executive positions. So my personal connection to the topic, obviously I'm a female business student at Bentley and going into the financial services industry, hoping to be a leader there. So this topic is very interesting to me. So this drove me to interview 27 female managers and executives across a variety of companies and industries to understand more about their professional experiences and what types of barriers they faced and how they overcame those challenges. And they're mainly from the Massachusetts area, which was kind of a limitation to my study, obviously, but a wide range of age groups, which was good, and was able to get quite a few women from different states. What's interesting is about half the sample was aggressive in nature. That's how they identified themselves, and were good at dealing with ambiguity, which are both traits that have historically been more, masculine, and that help them advance in the workplace. And something interesting is that most of the women identified as very collaborative and loved working with people, so that really allowed them to be successful. Most of the people I interviewed were married or in a relationship, so that helped me explore ways that they overcame barriers in terms of work-life balance and having families while also working in demanding careers. The industries were across very many, mostly conducted in the financial services and finished goods and retail. That's just because I interned in financial services and met a lot of people that way, and then I also participated in a women leadership program, which was in finished goods and retail. So that's probably another limitation. The way I found my sample was through networking and meeting new people. I had a mentor at a big financial services firm, and I was just chatting with her secretary, and her secretary's niece happened to be a huge executive at one of the biggest search engines that you use every day. I'm not going to say the name, but so it's pretty cool. I was able to interview her. It was a great experience. So as far as my findings, most of the obstacles that women face dealt with their corporate structures and cultures. So although many companies at the top say that they want to advance women in the workplace, many of the women found that their managers didn't actually, implement this on a daily basis, or by the way they dealt with their female employees, etc. So it's very important that to maintain those values at every level and to implement policies that will actually go toward that goal. And the second most prevalent response was self-imposed barriers, and those were from either women felt as though they couldn't have families and work in executive positions, or they were more risk averse and just took themselves out of the running before they were even considered. So that's something that many women are guilty of. And the people who were married emphasized that they had equal partnerships with their spouse and with their employer. So not only did their spouse have to make sacrifices and help them when having families and working in the workplace, but also their employers gave them flexible work schedules because they worked very hard in the beginning, proved themselves, and so their employers were willing to do the same. And they also built relationships and network. That was one of the biggest tools that although somebody is less aggressive or can't compete with the other men they're working with, networking and getting a great mentor was very helpful in advancing. Also persistence, technical expertise, and switching companies was popular. As far as switching companies goes, I was reading, in these days, career paths are multi-directional versus linear, so women have to understand that it's not just a straight path to the top anymore, where you're just working the same company. Some have to leave and come back, or go switch industries altogether, so have to again, be able to deal with ambiguity and know that it's not a certain course. And the majority believe that work-life balance is a reason why women don't go into the workplace, but we'll find soon that being an executive actually will give more flexibility for the women. So having better marketing tools for life at the top would help advance women in the workplace. This is just some visuals of careers. So my conclusions, which I compared like my interview responses to current day research and data, and found that investing in mentorship and networking programs is so important to have more women at the top. And also really focusing corporate structures and career paths to be more flexible, and understanding of the fact that women are dealing with having children and all these other issues while they're going to work in executive level positions. And as I had mentioned, having equal partnerships between spouse and the employer proved to be very important. Also, the marketing is very big. I was talking to one VP of her own financial planning practice, and she was wondering, why am I the only woman who's basically running my company? And she was asking me, should I bring a panel of female financial planners to come and talk to the female Bentley students to see why it would be great to work your way up to the top, and you actually do. She said she was able to have a family and enjoy all work-life balance while also running her own financial planning practice. And another thing I got out of my project was just a really interesting array of case studies of each interview I had. It was kind of like a chapter of each person's life and the experiences they had while working their way up in companies, and just understood the value of mentoring, networking, and now going into the workplace, I'll have a better idea of what I should expect and how I can deal with any challenges in a traditionally male-dominated environment. Thank you.
Questions? Jennifer?
Do you find any variability in your interviews, whether or not they, based on the gender of their managers?
Yeah, so it was interesting. It varied for each person with their personality and their the way they worked and everything, but they tended to relate better to women managers, which is understandable. You usually develop a better connection with someone you're more similar to, but there were a lot of male managers that were really supportive and helped advance the women as well. It was more like their attitude, the way they, what they believed in, like having more women in the workplace and everything like that.
Yeah, I had a related question, which is the idea of corporate culture, and how does that play into the story and I guess the outcomes of what you looked at?
Yeah, so I was reading that in the McKinsey survey, they called it, I forgot exactly what they referred it to as, but they were saying that having this like idea at the top level of companies needs to be implemented at every level with like managers and everything, and that's just being active and flexible with the women who are working, giving programs like PwC, for example. They take women out of performance reviews who have taken time off that year to like have children, so that there's like more of an equal playing field, because someone who is out of work for 6 months obviously wouldn't have the same results as somebody who's been working like all year round. So just things like that, and taking actions toward the same goal.
So if you take that a little bit further, I'm curious what your opinion is in terms of the effectiveness of having sort of an organic process where you change the corporate culture, as you mentioned, kind of from the top down, versus an even more top-down view where governments might sort of legislate change. How effective would that be, or is it necessary, or?
That was interesting, because I talked about Sweden and Denmark who have actual like policies with the government. I mean, I guess it works for them. That's the way their government really is. But here we have more of like independent private businesses. I think if each company just has their own way of dealing with this, and because I found that women who like switched to a different company found that it was a much more perfect fit, were so much more motivated and like really kept going. So I think I'm not calling for like a huge government-wide policy, but I think it's very valuable that each company tries to implement their own version of empowering women.
Yeah, I don't know if you can answer this, but this is a great study. So
Thank you.
Given that one of your findings is that women themselves have these self-imposed barriers to their advancement, and you also did a study of the personality type. So given that when women say they're aggressive, do you think they're saying they're trying to emulate the masculine personality, or is it that they're naturally aggressive, therefore they succeeded in a man's workplace or a male-dominated workplace? I'm curious what the voicing of that opinion was about.
Yeah, so we actually talked about that a lot during my interviews. So they found that they had kind of like masculine traits so they could kind of keep up with the guys they were working with, but I think they were naturally more competitive and realized that they needed to be this way in order to compete. But when we were talking, like if corporate structures are less, emphasizing the need to be this certain one cookie cutter way to be successful, then women who are less aggressive but are more influencers, which I've talked a lot with a lot of female executives who found they weren't very aggressive coming in and they had to struggle with that, but then realized that so many people respected them because of their intellect and they're able to influence the people they worked with, and that's how they got really far. And it's actually a really positive way to become a leader.
On the personality piece, I'm wondering if you found any differentials based upon industry, or also if you had any kind of a sample that was the non-managers, any people who had opted out, or general population, to be able to look at how personality differs from female executives to non-executives.
Yeah, so in financial services, I was actually surprised to find that a partner that I had talked to, she's not very aggressive at all. She's just a hard worker, and she marketed herself out in the market, and she just really capitalized on those amazing traits. So that's how she became successful. So I didn't think it was necessarily on industry based on my sample, but it's also limited, only 27 people. But I was surprised to find that consumer and finished goods and retail, they felt they needed to be so much more aggressive in order to get ahead. So that was an interesting, I would have assumed the opposite. But and some women who weren't managers, I mainly focused on managers and executives, but I talked to one woman at a commercial bank, and she just felt like, hopeless at the bank, having her personality. So I feel that can have a big impact.
Time for one more question. Suzy.
So tell us about how Sweden and Denmark differ from the U.S. and what aspects of their policies do you think we really do need to implement here?
Yeah, so I really love the way they had the paternal leave that they require at every company to offer. So I think that is pretty important, because if you're just requiring maternal leave, then there's evidently going to be not an even partnership, obviously, which is what we're striving for. So definitely having that, and it was just more the societal norms that I found. Like there were lots of men carrying their babies in strollers everywhere, and I remember we were all so surprised because we don't really see that a lot around here. But I think just having that norm over years will definitely make a difference. And what else? It was just so fascinating. At every level, I felt it was extremely equal in Sweden and Denmark.
Okay, well, we'll have to stop it there.